Not even me. Okay,
They
one.
learn from us, that's the
Just
problem.
a second, okay, one, time to go.
We're good? Everybody, welcome to our special work session this evening. We will only be in work session tonight, no general meeting tonight. So this will just be discussion, no decisions. And we only have one item on the agenda, a discussion pertaining to the proposed auto mall development. Staff, I don't know who's driving this tonight on staff side. Nathan, is that you? Is that,
Really,
you want me to drive it?
what we have, there was a request from the developer to meet with council and talk. They've been working through the working groups, and I think we've come to maybe some impasse, or just to, in order to move it forward, if that is the choice, we needed to bring this in front of the entire council. So you have my memo. Really, it's up to you how you want to go about this. If you'd like to, typically in your work meetings, you do not engage with individuals, but I think it would make more sense for you to talk at least to the developer in this case, or their team.
Okay. Okay, so do we want to break this down parcel by parcel then?
Mr. Merritt, however you want to handle it, we'll do it however you want to handle it, sir.
Welcome, Bruce. That is Bruce.
You just depend on
Okay.
whatever the asks are, whatever
Yeah,
the questions are, let's find out.
So Bruce, what do you want, you know the questions we've had, you know the parcel by parcel. Do you want,
Mr. Mayor, I think it makes sense to sort of do a little bit of the same thing we did with the working group the other day, but for the council, and I think I can shortcut it. Essentially, I like the image that's up on the screen, although I want to break one of them up into two pieces. And for that purpose, there's really 4 or 5 things at issue here, and they don't all have to work together, but some of them have to work together to make the deal pencil. And let me just, if I could, I'll run through the sort of 4 or 4.5 issues, and then I'll talk about them in, if it's okay, in sort of a low-hanging fruit version. So hopefully we can start off on relatively the right track. The 4 parcels, and this is where I'm going to need to make a small addition, but what you're seeing on your screen is in the blue area. I'm going to call that the auto mall parcel, although there's about a 5-acre piece that you know where it is, and whoever's running the cursor can show us, which is the Game Point piece, which is not currently owned by my clients. My clients believe they can acquire it, but they do not currently own it. So who's ever running the cursor, could you show where that is?
It's almost next to the future,
Yeah, right,
comes,
right by the minus crossing right there.
Yeah.
Just almost there.
Yeah, okay, so you're showing that.
Just
Well, it's actually down below.
just south,
No,
right
it's
there.
down-
northwest corner of the blue there,
yeah,
left.
it's the
Right.
northwest corner of the blue. Okay, that's the piece that my clients don't yet own. The rest of it in blue, I'll call the auto mall piece. If you go up a little bit to the purple piece, the office flex piece, there's a little bit of an issue there. That's showing about 18 total acres, but there's about 5 of them, which, if whoever's running the cursor, if they can they can show where the
Sorry about this right here.
parcel is.
Oh, coming right off the
On
beach.
that.
Bruce can't see this.
Yeah, that's it. And so up above that is about 5 acres, and it's a part parcel. The other parcel is 13 acres. I'm going to ignore the parcel for a moment, and I'm going to call that parcel either Office Flex or north of Miller Crossing. And the kind of orangish piece at the hard corner of Harriman Boulevard and Harriman Main Street, we're going to call that the garden plot for the moment. And then the triangle, the yellow triangle, we're going to call that either the triangle piece or the crescent piece, or keep the image up if you could, please. Thank you. So what I hoped we could do is we could talk about the low-hanging fruit first, because this is the one I think we all, that everybody agrees on, and that is in the auto mall portion of the property and perhaps other of the commercial pieces as well, to do a TIF and a PID. Now, obviously, I know the city has worked on those and has gotten them pretty much off the shelf. The kicker is we have a July 1 hard clock to get the TIF done before the state law changes based off of the Mike Schultz amendment. So I think that's the easiest one to talk about because I think we all agree on that one. If I'm not incorrect, is that what everybody's understanding on the council? This is where we are and where we want to go.
I mean, I believe
I'm not
so.
sure what our understanding is.
That we had
Well, I
intended
thought that the
to-
understanding was that the council was going to do a TIF and a PID to fund the auto mall infrastructure.
So I agree.
So, the PID was to fund the infrastructure, the TIF was the incentive to the users, end users.
Right. Fine. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
And we,
So
sorry, Bruce, this is
I'm sorry.
Chase. We have received a letter of intent that went through the process from the developer for a PID. It's not been approved, right? But we've gone through that process where the LOI has been sent on, a governing document has been prepared, and we have a draft governing document just waiting, again, for the council to review and make a decision on. So that, again, that's one of the pieces that we're discussing, but that's kind of where it's at.
So
the process.
I guess I would say that it still hasn't been discussed. It still needs to come before the council
It
for
does.
approval for that. So I
It
guess
does.
that would be incorrect in saying that we are all on board on that because we haven't had an opportunity to discuss that. At all. Correct?
okay, well that's good to know because obviously that's a critical element of any deal, and maybe I can just shelve that for a second and talk about the next issue, which is now in green, and that's okay. It's the triangle piece, which is now the green triangle piece, and obviously there's a lot of contamination. The cost of removing the contamination makes the property prohibitively expensive to develop. My clients want to have it rezoned to allow 121 units on the property. I know there's been some discussion on the city's behalf that at least some members of the city council didn't want it to be more than 80 units. And frankly, I think 80 units is, well, I know 80 units is not sufficient. Maybe it's 120 or 119, but that's the number one issue that's got some problems that we need to discuss. And hopefully the purpose of tonight was to figure out whether the council is, whether we're in a ballpark and it makes sense to negotiate. Because regarding the auto mall, the evil, in my opinion, Riverton City, you don't have to agree with me or not, but Riverton City is making a play for the auto mall and has apparently been telling people that they have actually landed the lead tenant for the auto mall, and I want to move forward. Obviously, we would like to get this taken care of and hopefully put together a negotiation that works on all the pieces. But it's going to require some compromise on behalf of the city, and this is the first one of those. And we would like 121 units. I recognize they'd have to go through a rezoning process, but if the ultimate votes aren't there, then we just need to know that. If we can't get near 121 votes, we need to know that. The third issue, and I'm going to stick with the low-hanging fruit and stick on this same map, and I'm going to ignore the 5-acre park parcel because that's, the city can do what it wants to do. My clients would buy it if it was zoned for something other than a park, but if the city wants it to be a park, then great. But in terms of the 13-acre kind of light purple, lavender, I guess is that color. Sorry, I'm not good with colors, but the lavender color piece, my clients would like that to be rezoned to for flex space. Specifically, it would be zoned basically a light industrial zone which would have a tilt-up style of concrete construction, with the primary uses being office warehouse and the potential for retail stores for some of the buildings if it's justified. It wouldn't be a condition, but it would be a hope. So that's the issue on that one. The final piece is the so-called garden plots down on the bottom there, and it's uncolored, but it's matched. It's outlined in black. My clients had proposed earlier to develop that as a multifamily site. I understand there's a lot of blowback to the multifamily. At the last work meeting we had, the city had said that there was a person interested, a developer interested in putting a hotel on that site. We asked to be put in contact with that hotel developer, and unfortunately, we have not heard anything about that since then. We've tried to find out what's going on, but we have no idea, have not been contacted about the hotel site. But if we can get agreement on the other things, and that includes the triangle at 121-ish, the automall financing pit and TIF, and the flex space on the 13 acres, my clients are willing to put the garden plot on hold for now. So that's basically an outline of what we think the positions are and the purpose of this meeting that we hope, and we thank you for having this special meeting, by the way. I think it's the only way you can do complicated issues like this is have a long face-to-face, so sorry about the Zoom, discussion where everybody gets to lay out their cards on the table and figure out if there's a deal or not. So if there's a deal on on the auto mall financing, the north of Miller Crossing 13 acres, and the triangle, then the garden plots can be postponed for now, and we'll deal with it later. My clients want to put commercial on there. They just need to make sure they've got the financial ability and timing to make the automobile function, because it's going to take some time to get it off the ground. Anyway, I'll be quiet after that. The team is there, and if there's something I can do to answer, but we mostly want to hear what the city has to say about that.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Appreciate the
Thank you, Mayor.
summary there. I think for our sake, I'd like to let's run these just one by one. I think don't worry about the PID. I think we've got other in front of the PID. Let's take this piece by piece. Let's look first. I'm just looking for feedback on. Let's start with the pink. Let's start with the lavender, the flex space. Looking for council's feedback on the lavender space.
Mayor, I'm going to actually shut my camera off so you're not looking up at the screen at me, so you're talking amongst yourself. It's far more important for you to talk amongst yourself than to see my ugly face on the screen.
Well, luckily we haven't seen it yet, Bruce, so we're okay. We're looking at the map. We're looking at the map, so
Oh, okay.
so we're good. So what are people's thoughts on? I'd like to get everybody's opinion on each parcel so we can kind of see where everybody's at. So, Teddy, where are you at on the lavender?
So Mayor, thanks, and staff, thanks for putting on this meeting. And I agree with you, Bruce, that this is the setting to go through this. And it may be a longer work meeting than we're used to, but, talking about these individual pieces and getting a consensus of where we're at. Being that it's a rezone or the flex space and we're looking at keeping it commercial, I don't hate the idea. I would love to see more retail and more sales tax-based uses there, but I believe it could be a potential for auxiliary services for said auto mall space, for your tent shops, your body shops, your other areas. I don't know what the space looks like. Again, it's a concept, right? It's an idea of the zoning rather than the actual building spaces. I think we are missing some of this stuff, some of this kind of space in our city as we currently sit. I know there's proposed space like this in other areas, but could it fit here? Could it work here? I think it could. They've also got some stuff on Anthem that they're looking at that's similar. It may fit and flow really nicely. I'm not opposed to it.
Okay. Okay, Sherry, where are you at with this?
Yeah, I don't, my biggest concern about that is that we feel rather dependent on creating as much retail as possible, and even though I heard that, well, we might bring in some retail there, I wouldn't be comfortable changing it unless there's some sort of a zoning condition that requires a certain percentage of it to be tax generating, cause it's really fast and easy right now to flip up some flex space, you see them going up all over. They'll do nothing for our tax revenue, and this is, I mean, if you wanted, I mean, I think there are better areas in our city to put flex space than that particular area because of the exposure it has to Mountain View and the potential it has to draw in more retail in that location. So that's concerning to me, without some sort of a condition requiring a portion of it to be retail. Tax generated retail.
Steve, where are you at?
Because of the location, I'm really opposed to any change from commercial. I think we need to really be focusing on tax generating commercial retail enterprises. There just isn't other Mountain View corridor facing commercial space that makes sense other than 134th in the corner or Academy Village until you get all the way down to Porter Rockwell. This is just a key area, and I don't know that, that really changes the plan and the land use to go from commercial tax generation to something else. And I can't see a good reason to do that right now, so.
Can I add on to what he just said too, when he says changes the area? The area right now is really starting to build up very well with retail. We've got Winco there, we've got a bunch of other things that are coming in there, which really starts to attract other retail. So if we shortcut that by saying, well, we need to do something fast and put a flex space, then I just think that we shortcut our potential for revenue.
Yeah, I just don't, I guess my point is I'm not sure that would be in the best interest of the city. That's why I would say that.
Jared? Anything to add?
Totally agree with you. My opinion hasn't changed. There's nothing new that's been presented.
Let's go down to, I think it sounds like the key one is gonna be the Crescent piece.
So, can I ask you a question, Mr. Mayor? Start here is, the Auto Mall Special District is just this piece on the right. The Crescent piece, the garden plots, none of the rest of that is the Auto Mall. It's not zoned for the Auto Mall, it's not part of the Auto Mall. I don't understand why these have to be part of an Auto Mall decision. I mean, why does building 121 units determine whether or not we should have a PID on the Auto Mall? Why does rezoning garden plots to residential have anything to do with how much flex space or something? It's just frankly making a more complicated situation of something that is pretty simple. And it feels like
I'm happy to,
honestly, Bruce, it feels like the Auto Mall is being used as leverage to get residential zoning approved. Frankly, that's what it feels like, and I'm not real comfortable with that.
I'm happy to address it, Steve, Councilman. I respectfully disagree with you. I understand that the Auto Mall is the only parcel zoned Auto Mall at the moment, but the problem is, Auto Mall is a concept that, while wonderful, takes time to develop on its own. And to do the development, it requires basically some assistance from a cash flow from other properties, and these properties are linked together. I'm not going to call it leverage. I'm going to call it linkage, and I think there's a subtle difference between the two. And I understand your point, but my clients need to look at it, and are looking at it, all as a single set of properties that they own in Harriman that work together. And we're just trying to explore what's going on here. If the city doesn't think this works, we need to know that. That's all. And for whatever reason, so that we can make other plans. as to the zoning on the commercial, if I could just respond to Sherry's question a second ago. I've dealt with a lot of places with a lot of commercial zones with the cities have the philosophy that if you zone it, they will come, and it doesn't often work out that way in my unfortunate experience across the state. Sometimes the market will come with commercial and sometimes it won't. And letting it be that is the best is the enemy of the good. And instead of getting jobs and services and some taxes, you wind up with vacant fields for a while. It's sometimes like I'm experiencing it right now. I'm leasing a piece of property, and unfortunately, I've set the price too high. So instead of getting a decent rent for it for the last couple of months, I've gotten zero. I'll take good rather than perfect, but it's your vote that counts.
I appreciate that, Bruce, but I would tell you that in my world, I believe that our job is for long-term planning, and sometimes if it has to sit as a field for a little while, I'm not as concerned about that if I think that it's gonna meet our long-term goals. I think that too oftentimes we see cities respond, and quite frankly, this city has responded, in my opinion, too often to meeting short-term demands and not looking long-term and understanding what's gonna have to be necessary for the city. We annexed in a very large development west of this, and we're gonna have a whole bunch more residents. And there's, absolutely no guarantee that we're gonna get commercial taxes or revenue out of that either. So if we don't start looking at long-range planning, I just think that we're being short-sighted for our current and our future residents.
Mayor, and I
I understand your position, and I thank you for articulating it so clearly. That's my clients need to know what your positions are, so we need to count. So far, I couldn't hear Jared's. I could hear everybody else, but I couldn't hear Jared at all. So I didn't hear what he said.
Well, I can
I apologize.
tell you, my opinion on any of these has not changed. I'm a no on everyone.
Mr. Mayor, so we had the pleasure today of going to Center Cal, and the guy that's running that project right now is the old city manager of Riverton. And they sat on that property for 15 plus years before they found the developer. And it was a field for that many years plus decades before. And they have a beautiful master plan development. And they zoned it properly for that. And I think we've zoned this properly for an auto mall, right? And if it takes a longer amount of time to find, those people to come in, if you plan it, they'll come, right? They'll build. And I think sometimes it does take time.
And if I might add, the three of you were here before this, right? Teddy and I are new to this.
Yeah.
From what I understand, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, now I wanna kinda talk amongst us now if we can, I think we've heard, but amongst us. And this is a question, I guess, and I think I know the answer, but this was never discussed prior to was the garden plot and the crescent piece, were they ever considered part of this project?
No.
Prior to this, okay.
I mean, initially, it was all just started off as an auto mall. Eventually, things started getting added to it, but it was never conditioned on performance on the auto mall. It was all, well, maybe we can do something good with this too. But it just feels like that, it now feels more like a condition for finances, and that was never part of the discussion that I was ever part of.
Yeah,
Well-
and I haven't heard a single end user say that they need residential for their auto dealership to survive.
Right.
I just don't see the connection there. It's not the city's responsibility to make sure that a developer is profitable in their land deals. That's not under our purview. In my opinion, it shouldn't even enter this equation. How this started out was that was entitled to be high density housing, unless we were able to change that during a certain period of time in which the city's actually borrowed money from ourselves to purchase that land and have contracts in place, purchase agreements with the developer. That's the only agreement. And prior to those contracts, and I believe when we purchased it or just before, it was rezoned to the auto mall. And in all of our public discussions, that was a good protection for us that, yep, if this was to happen, it's gonna take a long time, cause there's a lot of hurdles, including legislative ones. So we all knew that ahead of time. Our main goal was to preserve this commercial corridor on Mountain View. So the city's done that. We've since tried to do other things to help the developer along, including extending one of those contracts, right, they're supposed to perform on, 2020 hit, and we allowed them to not make the payment that was scheduled. We also entered into a purchase contract for the Crescent piece so that we would be able to take care of the contaminated soil, and hopefully they could develop that and make it, but changing it to residential was never part of that. And the price of that property is discounted to reflect the cost of remediating the soil. So we've done all we can to kind of further this along from the city's point of view, but it's not up to us to make sure that the developer can perform on their end like that. That's what they have. They knew the terms coming in. If there's issues there, there's issues there. I don't know how one affects the other as far as bringing in an end user, an auto dealership. Not a single one is saying, we need that Crescent piece or garden plots to be residential. Not one. The issue with Riverton, as I understand it, is that they've gotten other entities to agree to extend their existing TIF area that includes property taxes from those entities as an incentive for.
That's not true. They won't do that. They really can't do that.
So is there gonna be, my point is there's gonna be competition there. The one lever that we have to pull until July 1st, as does everybody else, is simply our own sales tax. That's what the TIF is, that's all it is. It's not like all these other agreements that we have that include property tax from the school district, from the county, from all those other entities. Doesn't include any of that, and everybody's playing by the same rules. So is there competition? Sure. And if
Good for the market.
yeah, and if they go to Riverton first, this will still be here, and it'll still be a freeway, and it'll still be viable later. We still have the same hurdles for new car dealerships. We're talking about used. That's not what we set out to do, right? The way the AutoZone's written is new. So the deal is the deal, and the deal is just the land and the zoning. That's it. And we all knew that we had to work on the rest, and it is going to take time to do that. But a cash flow issue that. I'll say the one thing the problem I have as far as saying that there's a cash flow issue and we need to help tide over, no, we don't. We've already done that by delaying the payment on the loan, by offering a discounted contract on the Crescent piece. We've done all we can to help there. It's not up to us to make sure that they can purchase it and I remember when we allowed that extension on the loan payment, we specifically said, because they had brought up buying the garden plot, said that's not part of the auto mall. If we're gonna give you this extension, we don't wanna see that you're gonna go buy that auto mall and not perform on these, and it seems like that's what's happened anyway. So I'm a little frustrated with all that part. I don't see that there's anything new that's been developed on any one of these fronts.
There's another part of this discussion though that came up late last year, and that was the idea of in order to get the auto mall, would we consider approving some other things? There were some questions asked about some residential things, approving the PID, that kind of stuff. And I think at that time, the council indicated, sure, we're willing to discuss the approval of those things, assuming that we have an auto mall. It's interesting that the ask is for the city council to approve high density, and then we're betting on an auto mall eventually filling out. Why isn't it, you fill up the auto mall, and if you do it, then you can get your residential? You know what I mean? They wanna put all the risk on the city, not on the developer, to fulfill. And that happens too often where the cart gets before the horse. The city agrees to do something, hoping that something else is gonna happen, and then the other thing never happens.
Yeah.
I believe in that conversation, almost the exact words were, well, we don't believe that any of those things would necessarily be insurmountable, and that we can consider anything if we have the auto mall. But if you're gonna bring it back piecemeal, kind of in the backwards order, not interested.
The other thing too to consider, I mean, it's not a huge amount of houses, but why would we put a whole bunch more residential houses that we have to, that are a cost to us and we still can't get any tax revenue? It just simply doesn't make any sense. And that particular piece it was zoned commercial when it was purchased. There was never any agreement to make it residential or anything, so it's what you bought.
Well, the city still owns it. There's just a
Right,
contract for them to
exactly,
purchase it at
exactly.
that price and remediate.
Yeah.
So, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work,
Doesn't
and we'll
work.
hold on to it
Yeah.
indefinitely until something does.
Yeah, there's no risk there.
Without disclosing anything, I think that the purchase price of the land reflects the cost of the contamination, right? Or the impact of the contaminated soils. It's not being sold at what a
Right.
15-acre commercial market piece would probably be. Is that a correct representation?
The agreement doesn't call that out in the recital specifically, but I think you could make that assumption that price, especially in the market, at which at the time when the contract was entered, right, doesn't necessarily reflect raw market value for that type of dirt.
Got it.
Mr. Mayor, may I cut in for just a second?
You bet, Bruce.
I appreciate it. I actually really I want to thank everybody for their candor, and I think I'm sort of communicating with my clients offline, or at the same time as we're on the screen here, but I think we've probably gotten a sense of where the council is on all of these issues very quickly and very candidly. So I'm going to suggest if it's okay with you that for our purposes we probably don't need any more of this special meeting. I think we've figured out what the council's saying and saying it clearly, and I guess I don't need to have a dead horse beaten a bunch of times.
Well, and Bruce, I said this in the last meeting we were in. I struggle that I think there's this assumption that we don't want, if we're not willing to make these negotiations, we don't want the auto mall. I think we're willing to help. I think we've proven that we will. I think there's interest in the auto mall. I think there's interest. I think this can come together, but I think all this other stuff just doesn't, we've got to think long term for the city, and so we would still love the auto mall.
No, I understand, Mayor. I appreciate it. I'm not trying to denigrate what's happened in any way. I appreciate, as I said, I was being sincere when I said I appreciated the candor with which everybody expressed their opinions. And I think my clients have gotten a clear view of what the city's position is, and we need to sit down and figure out what we do next, because the direction where we wanted to go next doesn't seem to be an issue that the city wants to go next. And we now hear, I think we've heard that pretty much unequivocally. The best I heard was that Teddy didn't hate one of the things. When the best you get is that one council member out of 5 doesn't hate something, out of the 3 issues, I think you've made your point, and I think we'll.
Well, and if I
we're
can
happy to
clarify one thing too, is in regards to the Crescent piece, I don't hate 80 units. I don't hate residential there. I worry about the number of units, and I worry about the size of the units. I don't want things overtowering all the other neighbors over there, but I'm not opposed to, similar density to the surrounding area, which I think is
Similar
about
size of lot.
yes. What is that, about 6
To the
units?
north,
I think,
not
something
the
like to the north, yeah. Similar continuation of kind of that development, I think would be really appropriate there. And I don't hate that. Matter of fact, I'm almost
We've
like
received
that,
a
right?
handful of emails from residents over there voicing their concern and opinion, and I think it aligns with what we're looking at right now.
Yeah.
I do hate residential there, just simply because of all the residential that's gonna be coming west of there, driving down that road. I think there's an opportunity to capture something better there than just to put more houses there, so.
And I could say it is being looked at. People are willing to look at it as a commercial. We just had somebody today look. We pointed it out. They said we don't hate that. So
The majority of the feedback I got from the residents is
But what I heard the council saying though is that you wanna consider that separately from the auto mall.
Yes.
So-
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's what my point was, that
Okay.
we understand there may be some issues about the number of units or whether it changes at all, but I've heard a pretty unequivocal anti-linkage message.
So Bruce, are you suggesting we make this meeting shorter than longer? Wow, that is
Uh,
awesome.
No, I'm not. I want you to go for another 3 hours because I'm not there to eat all the chocolate. No, I think I'm quite serious that if you're done, we're done, and we won't take offense, and we appreciate your time, and we appreciate having the special meeting, and we appreciate the candor, and we disagree with a lot of stuff, but you've got your job and we've got ours, and we appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate everybody's time tonight. Any other comments from, I know they're willing to, any other comments from council about this?
No, thank you.
Thanks, man.
Okay, I'll look for a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks.
See you, Trish.
Looking at your calendars.
You can ask her.
You might get
I think in our future processes,